What happens when you take the concept of the popular John Wick franchise and you move it to another studio like Universal and you bring in the Hardcore Henry director? You get Nobody, which is a movie I sat on for over a year, and I am really disappointed in myself. So let's talk about that right now. Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is $3 Theater, and I finally sat down the other night to watch Nobody. This is a movie that has been in my queue for quite some time. I remember when the trailer dropped, it's from the director of Deadpool and Atomic Blonde and Hobbs and Shaw. And I'm like, cool, man, it's David Leitch. Turns out it's not actually David Leitch directing. This is something that Hollywood tends to do in the marketing when they go from director, this person, it's not him actually doing it, but people think that it's like, okay, I'll give you guys a prime example. Take Nightmare Before Christmas, right? Everyone thinks Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas is directed by Tim Burton. It's not. It's directed by Henry Selick. Tim Burton did direct Corpse Bride, which is very similar in theme and tone and a lot of other things, but Henry Selick went on to go do James and the Giant Peach and Coraline, two vastly different animated films and wildly superior to Corpse Bride, in my opinion, especially Coraline. My God, it's amazing. That being said, this one was directed by Ilya Nashuler, and I'm probably mispronouncing that. For that, I apologize, but this is the guy who is a Russian filmmaker who is most known for doing Hardcore Henry, which if you've never seen Hardcore Henry, I need to do a separate review for that. I saw it back in 2016 when it came out. I got to go to a press screening of it. Oh my God, that movie is absolutely insane. And it didn't necessarily translate over to this, but bringing in the David Leitch stunt team and that kind of coordination that he's known for, with kind of the over the top zaniness that Hardcore Henry had, some of the weirder sensibilities in that movie, really does kind of bring into the whole Nobody universe, which again, as I said in the little cold open, it does feel very similar to John Wick. In fact, Derek Kolstad wrote Nobody, and he's also the creator of the John Wick franchise. So are the two involved in the same world? I mean, they have the same DNA, they have the same elements. It's almost like light side versus dark side. What I mean by that is the concept here is that Bob Odenkirk plays a man simply named, he's nobody, right? He's Hank. And he's just kind of like, whatever, man, he's just an average nobody guy. He works for his wife's father. He works for his father-in-law doing the accounting of what appears to be just a machine shop. He's got really nothing of value to provide to anybody. He just kind of lives life in this routine. No one really respects him. He doesn't even own a car. He takes the bus everywhere. He loves his family. He loves his kids. He loves what he does, but he's still unfulfilled. And as we find out during the process of this whole thing, it's because, well, he's a badass mofo who is just, trying to suppress what he is so good at. Kind of similar to what John Wick started off as, right? Former assassin, the Baba Yaga of the Russian underworld in New York, retires to go and live a life with a nurse and then get a dog. And then we all know what happens with the John Wick franchise, but John Wick is an amazing world building experience. This movie has a lot of that same stuff going on. So as Hank starts to just kind of live his life and we see this mundane, droll existence happen in the opening shots of the movie to let us know, yes, it's very simple. It's very straightforward. This is what he does. One night, robbers do break into his house and he goes to basically kill them. He goes to confront them and he can do it, but he stops and he lets them get away. And this, of course, causes his family to really just kind of look at him like he's a big ass pussy. In fact, his neighbor basically calls him a pussy. The cops call him a pussy. Everyone basically calls out Hank for being this just guy. Now, you and me, we know as the audience, we're like, yeah, he could throw down. He can definitely fight. He can scrap a little bit. He knows what he's doing. But he's trying to play it up to clearly protect the kids, and he feels bad about it, but you can tell this is a guy who wants to just let go. Right? He wants to shed his clothing. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing, pretty much trying to be a sheep, living as a sheep, but he just wants to shed that skin and go back into his wolf ways. And then when his daughter says, hey, where's my kitty cat bracelet? What happened with my kitty cat bracelet? That sends him over the edge. Now, the reason why I really liked that scene is because I got two kids. I have $2 of my own. I understand that mentality. I'm not trying to sit there and say that I could be an action hero. Funny thing was, yesterday, the New York Post actually ran a headline saying I think it was 80% of American men believe they could be an action star. And I'm like, man, I've got diabetes and asthma. I ain't doing shit. But in my brain, I'm going to think of a lot. That's why I play video games. But that being said, he goes off and he then hunts down the people who, like stole the kitty cat bracelet. And what's really funny is we don't know much about who he is at this point, but we know he has a tattoo on his arm, and he ends up going to one tattoo shop and confronting these guys, and they're going to beat his ass until one old veteran sees the tat and just goes, "Thank you for your service." And he runs off and like shuts the door and locks it, basically saying like, "Look, I don't want to be anywhere near this. You guys can fight this guy." That's that. And of course they don't do it, but they're clearly intimidated by him, which I love. So then he finds the people, and this is where it was fascinating. Like he would have killed him. He was flat out going to kill him, but he realizes that they simply are just people trying to get by. They're just trying to do what's best for their family. They clearly, like are not ultimately terrible people. And he has to like struggle with that whole notion of like, I am just pissed. But that anger then finds its outlet, which of course leads us into the main conflict of the film. What I loved about the bus scene, you see it in the trailer, is he is just worked up. Somebody is going to die that night. I think is the best way to say it, but he was looking for like the right people to do it. But then magically like a Humvee full of drunk Russians crash next to the bus and then get on the bus and start harassing people. And it looks like they're going to assault and probably hurt a young woman. He at this point is like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna, he says something along the lines of like, "I'm gonna fuck you all up." And he does. And that whole fight scene is great. It's wonderful. It's amazing. However, it's a little bit over the top in a couple of ways, because like he gets stabbed and beat, you know what I mean? But you could tell it's a movie and it's fun. And what really cracked me up was one of the main guys that he was fighting was actually like the Taekwondo instructor from Barry season 2. So like all I can see is just that guy in that scene, but it doesn't matter. I still like it. But what I thought was actually really good, and it shows to who Odenkirk is as a character, or at least who Hank is as a character, is that the one Russian guy, he cracks his windpipe, right? Just crushes it. And that dude is choking to death. So he goes and he actually performs, field surgery on him by putting a straw in his throat to allow the guy to have an open windpipe to be able to breathe. He didn't have to do it, but he chose to do it because he's not all evil. That's kind of the whole point of the character. And then, of course, from there, you find out that the brother of the guy that, he beat up was like this powerful Russian mobster who is like basically protecting the mob's 401k in cash that just circulates its way around this, different parts of the city or country or whatever. And, a very colorful over the top villain is more or less what it is, right? A vengeful drug lord, so to speak. And then that guy comes after him, and I just love that shit because at this point it goes into full on John Wick. Like the assault on Hank's house plays out so similarly to John Wick when they come into his house in that movie and he fucks them all up. Like I'm watching this and I'm like, it's so John Wick. And then as you start to uncover more of the story, you find out that Hank is actually an auditor for the 3-letter agencies. He's the last guy that you want to see pop up on the doorstep. And it's funny because you look at him and you're like, it's Saul Goodman, man. Like you wouldn't really get that kind of over the top intimidating vibe out of him, but Bob Odenkirk does a fantastic job with portraying that particular mindset when he needs to. And of course, he's joined by RZA and Christopher Lloyd in probably his best performance since, I would say, Back to the Future 3 or Piranha 3DD, whatever you want to say. No, probably Back to the Future. But what I really liked about it, though, is like he gets captured and then he ends up getting out. And like the one guy is like dying, but he's trying to like tell him his life story. So this is how we get more about who, nobody is. And then he's telling the story and the guy dies. And then he goes, back to the house. And there's all of the guys that he already messed up. And like one of them is still alive. So he gets the family out of there. He drags the bodies down to the basement where he's going to basically burn them all anyway. And that guy is still alive and he continues telling him his story. And then that guy dies before he finishes telling him his story. It's just like this. It's funny because you're like, he just wants somebody to listen to who he is. And then, of course, he goes full ham, pulls out all these gold bars, buys the family business, gets everybody out of there, turns it into a Home Alone, type situation, goes to the ob shack, burns like hundreds of millions of dollars of Russian money, baits the bad guy over to the place. And then from there, they all have this massive shootout. It's goofy. Like the end of the movie is goofier than anything else. And I think that was probably like my biggest complaint with it. And I say that even as a minimalist complaint. where like the final climax of the movie is one that you're laughing at because you're like, okay, where is like everyone is, they're just like, it's just a shooting gallery and they're all pew 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 pew, right? And then like they're not even getting shot. Like Christopher Lloyd, you figured any point in time, there's at scenes in the movie, he's got like all these shotties and there's dudes running behind him that could easily shoot him and he just like they don't ever get shot. Cool. Whatever it might be, it's fine. It's fun. It ends, especially how he kills the bad guy by putting a claymore on like a bulletproof glass and running up at him and then pulling it. It's so over the top, right? It's so over the top. And then from there, like the wife totally accepts him for who he is. She understands who he is. We kind of get the vibe that she already knew what he was essentially, or to some extent what he was. They end up buying a new house. He gets some call from an unknown number, most likely setting up that they are needing him to go in for another mission. They need nobody to come back into the field. And then it cuts to, there's a post-credit scene with the RZA and Christopher Lloyd driving an RV full of weaponry along the coastline. I'm assuming they're taking it to Mexico or something like that. And I'm like, I don't even know what the hell's going on with that, but it's obviously a tease for the next movie. And that to me is the really funny thing about it. So let me say, like, we talk about kind of why I think this has a bit to do with like the John Wick thing. So it very much has to do with, again, very similar, right? So you have the government agencies here, this and Russian mobsters and Russian gangsters, right? So nobody works for all the agencies. So he's a spy, right? Let's kind of equate this with the old spy versus spy angle. If I'm going to compare the two universes, John Wick being an assassin for the Russian mobsters, right? Baba Yaga, the myth, the legend, they're kind of, if we're going to yin yang, I think would be a good way of looking at it, right? Where they're just the same on the opposite end. And that's kind of interesting for competing ideologies. Maybe that might be kind of what Derek Kolstad wanted to do with this. Now, why Lionsgate did not pick this up and go with it, I don't understand it at all. Why this went to Universal and became a Universal property. I think the budget on this thing was only $16 million. It really wasn't that much. It was a low budget movie and it doesn't feel like a $16 million film. But it only grossed worldwide $57.5 million. And that has a lot to do with the fact that it came out during the pandemic, a year into, not even a full year into the pandemic, and people weren't going as much, and it hit DVD relatively quickly. In fact, it was on premium video on demand April 15th. So, and it came out on March 26th, 2021. So it's like, it was on premium VOD a month later, home video a little bit after that. It came out on my birthday too, and I totally didn't go see it. Now that I'm kicking my ass more for. But at the end of the day, I love this movie. It was so much fucking fun. I want to watch it again. I can't wait to see if they do a sequel with this thing. If they found a way to move it back over to Lionsgate and merge it with the John Wick universe, I think it would be cool. I could see this expanding outward to having a whole bunch of like spin-offs and like giving us more about the agencies and having that be maybe something on Peacock, or who knows, maybe even Stars with the whole Continental thing might find a way to tie it in. There's a universe here worth expanding upon. And quite frankly, I'm 100% here for it. However, what do you guys think about the movie Nobody? Your thoughts, let me know down in the comment section. Let me know a movie you want me to watch and check out. I'll talk to you all later. Have yourself a great day. Thanks again, and peace out.